Hello and welcome to another edition of My Views with the News with me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK television. Well, to say this has been a decisive month, it's probably the past couple of months. Everybody in Britain knows that we are in general election fever. Brexit fever, political fever, you name it, that's what Britain is all about at the moment. But to start off with, I was really enamoured, so enamoured with a story that I heard about this week, about two young Albanian boys who flew out of windows during the earthquake and almost caused all sorts of complications to themselves, and how Prime Minister Rama took them to meet Ronaldo, the world-famous football player. Now, for me, that's generosity, that's happiness, and at a time when Albania is so suffering from all the consequences of the earthquake, it's so endearing, it's so happy to sort of see just little things like this, but I would imagine for the two young boys means so much in their lives as well. And it is important to remember that as we are talking right now, children and people are still suffering in Albania the after effects of the earthquake shocks. People, I understand, are still out of their homes. They don't know when they're going to go back. Places like Durrës, which is one of my favourite cities in the world, have been badly hit as well. So I hope and I wish this week all Albanians to have a positive, happy, enjoyable week. You so deserve it after all of this. And for the people who are suffering right now, we are trying as a television station to send money to you, and I know money is coming in from all over the world to actually help situations where money is required to actually rebuild this wonderful country at the same time. So, as I say, when I look at all these wonderful pictures, I mean, you look at how happy these two young boys are to actually see Ronaldo, and how kind of him as well. How kind of him. They were taken to Italy to meet Ronaldo, and it's typical of this young man as well, how kind he really is. I think he has a son of his own, roughly about the same age as well. So it must be pulling on his heartstrings at the same time. So I think, well done, Ronaldo. Well done, Prime Minister Rama as well, for organising this. And I hope the children have a memorable memory for the rest of their lives because of it. So, as I say, I sigh because we're now coming up to the final day. Hooray! Tomorrow we cannot talk about politics in Britain. And the reality is, in Britain, on election day, neither the Conservatives with Boris Johnson, the Labour with Corbyn, or the Liberal Party with Joe Swinson are able to actually go on television until everybody has put in their votes. So after 10 o'clock tomorrow night, people like myself will be studying the form and watching to see all the trains that are happening across Britain. At the moment, it is seen that perhaps Boris Johnson has a 20-seat lead, which is quite a big lead compared to what he had before. And so he will be forming the next government. However, I know what the British voters are like as well. And apparently, even on election day, it's what's known as the swing vote. They can swing and sway, and people can make up their minds in a different way. Certainly in the past few days, all three leaders have been spending enormous amounts of time rushing right across Britain. Boris Johnson this morning was seen out delivering the milk. He's a milkman now in the north of England. Corbyn apparently is in Scotland today talking to people in Glasgow, and will be coming back to London as well because he has a London constituency. Jo Swinson, her constituency is in Scotland, and so she is torn between really sort of looking after her own constituency in Scotland and being the leader of the Liberal Democrats in London. So what does this mean? If this is true and Boris Johnson has the lead and the potential to put Brexit through, then what he is saying is that the Brexit bill that he wanted will go through, and this will start happening next week. The Queen's speech will be next week as well again. And then by the end of January 2020, we will be out of the common market and the EU. And then, that's when we will actually then start negotiating our new trade deal. Now, a lot of people are saying, including Jeremy Corbyn, it's all very well for the trade deal to be happening right now. Is it possible in 11 months? A lot of people are saying this is impossible to do it. Who knows? I mean, next year is going to be another fascinating year for politics in Britain. In the meantime, Jeremy Corbyn has kept on going on and on and on about the NHS and how he feels that under a Boris Johnson government, the NHS could eventually be sold off in part to the United States. And so there's what's known as a sweetheart deal that the United States are talking about at the moment with Britain that will give the types of sales opportunities to sell into the United States. However, the United States and people like President Trump are very good negotiators, and they could be sending their ideas and what they want to sell back into Britain. One of them apparently has been pharmaceuticals, and that could cause a major upset, a major cost rise in our NHS. Who's telling the truth? Where's the truth? I think at the moment, my view is, I think basically politics now in Britain has been taken over from the United States, and all we're listening to are sound bites. Sound bites that might mean something, might not mean something. Jo Swinson, for example, said at the very, very start of the campaign a month ago that she was going to become Prime Minister. Now, all that's been rolled back, as there's only a few seats that she might be getting now, probably up to 20, 25, if she's very, very lucky, out of 630 seats. So she is the party that is trying to stop Brexit from happening. So I don't know. I think the reality at the moment in Britain, it is too close to call. And a lot of pundits like myself in political politics are saying that perhaps we might have another hung parliament, which means that nobody has an overall majority. So, as I say, you know, all three of them at the moment are up there smiling, fighting, pushing for their own particular causes. And who knows what's going to be the outcome, but you will know in the days to come and through the types of broadcasts that ALB UK television will be doing over the next few days, you will know exactly what is happening in the future. And now, just, you couldn't make this a story even if you try to write it. Just as we're finally getting into the final days of Brexit and the politics, we're now facing 100-mile-an-hour gales coming in Britain over the next few days. Cars are being washed off to sea, huge winds are sort of happening. And this could partly determine, if this happens tomorrow during the general election, this could actually cause all sorts of issues. Because if people don't go out to vote, then all three parties may suffer the consequences of the weather as well. And this is one of the downsides of holding an election in December. There hasn't been an election in December since 80 years ago. People don't like voting in Britain in December. It's cold, it's windy, it's damp, and who knows, by tomorrow it could be snowing as well. This puts a lot of people off at the same time. So at the moment, all the three political parties are looking at the weather forecast as well. You couldn't make it up if you tried in Britain at the moment. And finally today, we're getting news coming in from New Zealand. As people may already know, there's been a major volcano eruption in New Zealand in the past few days, and several Brits have been caught up and been apparently severely burnt in the process, trying to get off this island where the volcano was. Now, for me, when I listen to things like this, I think it's a bit crazy to say the least, because apparently experts have been saying that the opportunity and that it may be happening to have another eruption. These are the experts also saying it could be happening very, very quickly. And this was decided a couple of months ago. So why tourists are still being allowed onto this island to climb up the volcano? There's been deaths. There's been terrible burns happening at the moment, and they even found the remnants of a helicopter as well. So at the moment, New Zealand hospitals, the police, all the rescue services are at full stretch to try and get all these people off the beach and try and find out who is remaining as well, who's alive, and unfortunately, who has died. So I feel great sympathy for any of the British tourists who at the moment are seen to be suffering serious burns, as we are allegedly being told at the moment from New Zealand authorities. And as I'd say at the moment, it's not the type of story we want to be doing at Christmas. Above all, right now, we should be a very positive country. We now, on ALB UK television, are creating a new project called positivebritain.co.uk. Now, this vision is a vision for the future on how we can support communities like the Albanian community, how we can support their businesses, how we can support and promote the different nationalities and the communities from Albania, and finally, how to work with young people to actually give them methods of learning television skills. So that's me. That's another edition of My Views with the News on ALB UK television. I hope you're having a peaceful and restful time. I will be doing more news programs next week to keep you up to date with what's happening right now. But from me, Ian Pelham Turner on ALB UK television, My Views with the News, it's goodbye for now and have a great day. Hello and welcome to another edition of ALB UK television and positivebritain.co.uk, where we talk about some of the big questions that are happening at the moment in politics in Britain, and how, please goodness, we can actually create a positive 2020. And I have Michael Spooner with me, as always, the sage, the positive person, the person who's going to give me all the answers this afternoon. Aren't you, Michael?
I'll do my best, Ian. I'll do my best.
So how do you see the election if Boris Johnson wins with a 20-seat majority? Yeah. How do you see the future going for Britain at the moment? What do you see as the positives coming out of this?
Well, the positives coming out, let's assume the Conservative Party get a 28 seat majority, which is what they're projecting with the current polls. In there, for small businesses, it's going to be business as usual. The same things that we've been saying at Positive Britain for the last 2 or 3 months. It's about businesses going back to the basics, the fundamentals, looking at their finances. We will leave Europe. We will be leaving the European Union by the 31st of January, and then there'll be a whole year of trade negotiations, very tight deadline by the 31st of December 2020. And so if everything goes to plan, if Mr. Johnson gets his way, and Europe meets us halfway, then the future is positive in terms of businesses. It's going to be challenging though, Ian, I think, for many businesses, particularly those that export. Some of our farming based businesses, the businesses based in Northern Ireland are going to clearly have a bit more of a challenge, a significant challenge in my opinion. But in general, I think businesses are going to have to double down on their costs, really focus on quality, specialization really, because this country is where, I mean, our technology, our artificial intelligence, our pharmaceutical industries are biosciences and stuff. Well, we lead the world in some of these areas, and so that's not going to change. That's only going to get better for us. Financial services are going to we're still going to be the biggest financial centre on the planet, and that's going to continue. Consultancy and business and law, we're a dominant global player, and so some industries Britain will still continue and grow. And I think the government's talking about a global Britain type brand in the Foreign Office, and as they're taking things forward. So I think it's positive, but it's, I think, work in progress, hard work, Ian, for many of our small businesses. The question is, are they going to put the money in the public sector? Are they going to regenerate high streets? Are they going to sustain the welfare state for those people in our country that have to make a transition in terms of from one job to another, as there's a bit of a shakeout in the bigger businesses. Yep.
How do you think, I know you've been highly involved with the Federation of Small Businesses in Britain, how do you think FSB sees Brexit?
I think they've got a 10-point plan. I think they have a kind of list of key outcomes that they're trying to get. They will get most of their most of the things they want is going to come their way. They're pretty well linked into the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, so whichever party wins, including Liberal Democrats if they win, I think the FSB are quite geared up to, they want more investment in infrastructure, public sector. They want skills agenda, much more encouraging apprenticeships and skills for young people, and getting businesses to take up apprenticeships. That apprenticeship levy didn't really work very well, so that needs to be changed. They have a kind of manifesto, they call it a manifesto, around small businesses, and I think they're getting most of the things they want. Certainly from the Labour Party, that's closely aligned to what the FSB want. The Conservatives, kind of, their manifesto is kind of much more leaner, and it's hard to say what they want, but given the nature of the Conservative Party, small businesses will be okay if they were to lead the country, or if Mr. Johnson has become Prime Minister, then yes, I think business is going to have a bright future, Ian, I think.
So putting your sort of hat on, your hats for the future on at the moment, what would you say are the things that businesses in Britain should be doing, especially small and medium-sized businesses, enterprises? What do you think they should be doing in Britain right now to prepare themselves for Brexit? Right.
Well, I would say three things. First thing is they need to, again, focus on their business plans, and I think they should revisit their business plans, because Brexit changes up all existing plans. So they should revisit their plans, look at costs, look at income generation and their sales and marketing. So that's going to be something practical they need to do. They should look at investing in technology, innovation, training and research and development in their businesses. They should explore ways in which they can expand either across the UK if they're not UK-wide already, and definitely they should be looking at how they can take advantage of the opportunities in Europe. And because when you get disturbances, Ian, and disruption, which Brexit will bring, there's always opportunities for businesses to take advantage and exploit. So there will be winners and losers. And I would want our business sector to be mainly winners, and if that means they're going to have to exploit gaps in the market that will be generated because of Brexit.
Where do you think countries, which type of countries should we be targeting? And what do you also think about, because there's another philosophy happening at the moment that they're talking about with free ports being established around Britain. What do you think about those two ideas?
Free ports, I think, I don't know where they, I don't really have much comment on free ports, but I think the countries that we will continue to have close relationships, Germany is the main country in Europe that we must closely target, and France, of course, and Italy. Those are kind of the three main strongholds in Europe that will continue to be places where most people want to do business. But I think the Scandinavian countries as well are phenomenal places for business. Norway, Sweden and so on. Those countries are...
What about further afield? What do you think of this sweetheart deal that they're talking about with America, for example?
I think that's going to take... I think it's going to be hard. The problem is when we align or semi-align with Europe, it makes it very, very difficult to do a trade deal with America. I think the trade deal with America will be in a very narrow set of industries, not agriculture or foods and stuff. I think it will be in...
But do you think the Americans will accept that? Because they're talking about. I mean, the big fear that the Labour Party's been putting out is things like pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
Creating a rising cost for the NHS.
Yes.
Things like pollinated chicken or
chlorinated
chicken.
Yes.
It could be pollinated as well. Yeah, for all I know.
Could be both.
I don't know how the Americans can eat it.
Apparently it's okay. But I mean, no, I think you're right. The Americans will, when we come out of Europe, we will be in that trade deal will be at a disadvantage because they're 10 times bigger, a massive market, and they'll drive a hard bargain. But I think the NHS clearly is going to be off bounds. But the pharmaceutical part, the patent, I think that will come back onto the agenda. They're going to try and drive up the prices because we pay phenomenally cheap prices for our drugs and pharmaceuticals because the NHS is the biggest healthcare service on the planet by far. Nothing comes even close to it, and so the NHS can drive down prices. NICE can drive down prices, and the Americans are not very happy about this. So, but I think it's going to be controversial. So you will see it in the news over the next year when they're negotiating. I suspect that the NHS will come back up again, but I don't think they're going to privatise it. There is Section 75 of the NHS and Social Care Act. There is a provision in there, and I know the Labour Party wanted to revise it or repeal it or abolish it. And I know the Liberal Democrats are talking about an NHS Protection Act or some kind of measure. So all the parties are concerned about the NHS, and I think the political backlash, I think the government will find it very difficult, whichever government gets in, to really I think that's going to be off bounds. I'm hoping so, but there will be other aspects of trade that the Americans will want to be get their footprint, their size 9s into Britain, and we need to drive a hard bargain with them. But clearly they've got an advantage over us because of their size and their dominance and the dollar, of course.
Sure. One of the big issues that's come out during the politics, but obviously. Is of something. I think we are a divided nation at the moment, and we don't seem to be able to trust people, especially the politicians now. How would you finally rebuild the trust of the nation, and how can opportunities like positivebritain.co.uk help to facilitate that?
Yeah. Well, I think, yes, you're right, Ian. We are divided where there's this Brexit versus Remain. I think it's a false divide. It's an artificial manufactured divide, unfortunately, by the very same Conservative Party, in my opinion. But I think when Brexit is done, if Brexit goes ahead on the 31st of January and then we get a deal, we negotiate a trade deal, over time, the divided Britain will dissipate a little bit. There will be a hangover, but it will dissipate. I think the way we bring ourselves together is, I think the government needs to do massive investment up north in the northern powerhouses. Would really, because a lot of the Brexit concentration of bad feeling is north versus south, and so if we can rebalance the economy, that's going to be a big thing. That's something that all parties have been talking about. The question is whether they do it on the ground. Secondly, they need to focus on tackling poverty, and I think a lot of the frustration is where people are struggling in Britain at the moment, financially and so on, and we don't want a government that gives the impression that it doesn't care for people when in their time of need, and so it's whichever government gets in, there does need to be a big focus on tackling or anti-poverty measures in the economy, not just welfare, but what Positive Britain would say is focus on entrepreneurship, enterprise, wealth creation, help people to start their businesses, invest in their own training, their own transition and development, really focus on our young people, they're the future, and protect our older people. And what worries people is when your mother and your father is struggling in terms of social care, and you can't help them as their child. That is something that people find heartbreaking, and they expect government to do it. They've been sitting on the Deal Not report for the last 6-7 years, and neither government, the Conservatives, the Labour Party, or the Liberal Democrats, neither one of them have got their heads round the table to resolve this matter, and that needs urgent attention, because our older, our parents and our grandparents are. They've done their bit. They need to be looked after, and that's what Positive Britain would say. So at both ends of from the cradle to the grave, I suppose, at both ends of the spectrum, need to be looked after, and then allow the people in the middle to work well, and start their businesses. And I think that's how we bring the nation together over time. Okay,
Michael, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Ian. It was a pleasure as always.
So. From the sage himself, Michael Spooner, thank you again from positivebritain.co.uk. And from me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK Television and positivebritain.co.uk. We are trying and striving now to promote Britain right across the world, businesses and the people and the communities as well. So it is goodbye for now, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.